I have this knack for seeing things for not what they are, but for what they're going to be when I get done with them. By the way, it does not work very well with relationships, however.
Welcome to the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast, the show where you learn how to plan, build, and live the tiny lifestyle. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with MJ Boyle, a mastermind in the tiny house community and the founder of several successful tiny house businesses, including My Tiny House Village and Oregon Teardrop Rentals. MJ has not only built and rented out 9 unique tiny homes, but has just embarked on transforming a construction trailer into an alluring tiny home called My Tiny Bunkhouse. In today's episode, MJ will share her innovative approach to waterless and odorless toilet systems that enhance both guest and staff experiences. We'll also delve into the art of rehabilitating and renovating tiny structures, a skill MJ has honed over the years of experience, turning dilapidated shells into dream homes with incredible results. Join us for a comprehensive discussion on maintaining high occupancy rates, exceptional guest satisfaction, and the strategic intricacies of managing multiple tiny house locations efficiently. It's a packed interview you won't want to miss. But before we get started, did you know that I personally send Tiny House newsletter every week on Tuesdays? It's called Tiny Tuesdays, and it's a weekly email with tiny house news, interviews, photos, and resources. It's free to subscribe, and I even share sneak peeks of things that are coming up, ask for feedback about upcoming podcast guests, and more. It's really the best place to keep a pulse on what I'm doing in the tiny house space and also stay informed of what's going on in the tiny house movement. To sign up, go to thetinyhouse.net/newsletter, where you can sign up for the Tiny Tuesdays newsletter. And of course, you can unsubscribe at any time. I will never send you spam. And if you ever don't want to receive emails, it's easy to unsubscribe. So again, that's thetinyhouse.net/newsletter. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy next week's Tiny Tuesdays newsletter. All right, I am here with MJ Boyle. Michelle MJ Boyle is a patented inventor, an outgoing and accomplished speaker, enthusiastic glamper, passionate entrepreneur, as well as the founder and creator of My Tiny House Village, Oregon Teardrop Rentals, and My Tiny Creekside Retreat. From Vermont to Texas and Florida to Oregon, MJ has graced the stages of over a dozen events and festivals and has been featured on The Drew Barrymore Show, The New York Times, Yahoo, MSN, Business Insider, House Beautiful, and Costco magazine, and in countless articles and videos documenting her creations and her story. Everywhere she goes, she brings wit and humor, humility and expertise, but most importantly, the desire to inspire others to live their own version of tiny house heaven. One of my favorite people in the tiny house world, MJ Boyle. Welcome back to the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast for the third time.
Woohoo! Thank you very much. It's so great to hear a familiar face. Hear familiar voice and see your face.
Yeah, and as somebody who is I guess former podcast host yourself, you had to make sure that bio was just full of tongue twisters.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I think I did it. I don't have to do any overdubs there. So, I was just reviewing, our past conversations. You were on the show, episode 40-ish. So that was like 2018, 2019. And then you were there again, episode 90-ish. So that's like 2019-ish. And, it's been a while. Back then you had maybe 2 or 3 houses. So just catch me up to what is going on, because you're just like a powerhouse entrepreneur, just getting these tiny houses online and creating these businesses.
So first and foremost, I am finishing my 9th tiny home right now. So 9 tiny homes in 9 years. So that's where I'm at right now. Going back a little bit. So the last time we talked, I was My Tiny House Village was a small village of tiny homes on a retired Christmas tree farm in Oregon.
Yeah.
And basically the concept was after I opened my first tiny home rental. So my core business model is I design and build tiny homes specifically for use as short-term rentals.
Yep.
And so the concept basically was then it was so successful that I took the money from my first tiny home rental, right, and rolled it forward and then did another one, another one, another one. In the meantime, I also started another small company called Oregon Teardrop Rental. So it's very, very, very similar to the tiny house rentals in that they're tiny, they're colorful, they're designed by me, they're rentable, da da da. But the difference is that people take them with them camping,
Yep.
With the tiny homes, they stay in them. With the teardrops, they take them with them. Basically, the reason why I kind of connected those two companies in this conversation initially is because I was in an absolute perfect position when COVID hit. There, from a business perspective, there is, the people whose business went boom and the people whose business went bust. And I was in the boom category. I was the most popular girl in town. Every single thing that I owned was 100% rented for 10 straight months. It was pandemonium.
Wow.
It was crazy
Wow.
nuts. Yeah. And so I had those two businesses, and then I did so well during that period of time, and I was looking for land, my own land to land, basically.
Yeah.
And because I was
Yeah.
on leased land in Oregon, I knew that was a ticking time bomb. So, that it's someone else's land, and eventually I'm going to have to move the village. So in 2021, I purchased an illegal cannabis grow operation that is
Okay.
waterfront with a hoarder's house. So I took the profits from my COVID experience and I invested in my own land in 2021. And then sure enough, in fall of 2022, I was notified by the county that I was in violation, a very familiar story for most tiny house enthusiasts. I was informed by the county that I was in direct violation and I would have to move my tiny house village.
Okay.
Yeah, luckily I had someplace to go. That's the short version of where I was last time we chatted and then kind of where I am today.
My gosh, moving one tiny house is a lot. So you had to move, how many was it at that point?
1, 2, 3, 6. 6 of them.
6.
Yes. And
Damn.
I was only out of business, or I was only closed down, okay, for 30 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now this illegal cannabis grow operation hoarder house situation, I'm guessing there wasn't like a lot of infrastructure for tiny homes there. So what did you have to do to the property to get it ready for the 6 tiny homes?
Yeah, there was no infrastructure. Although I did have to move 6 tiny homes, not all of them came here. But basically what I had to do was install an RV park, basically. So I have almost
Wow.
3 waterfront acres. And I basically got a contractor and a permit and the whole 9 yards and installed an RV park. So that involved, of course, tapping into my existing water supply. Now, the power was an interesting story because although I had a lot of extra, I have 3 200 amp panels. So I have lots and lots of power. Thank you, Cannabis Grow Operation. But I couldn't leverage any of my existing electrical infrastructure because of how the property's laid out. There was no way to ditch to get from where the power is to where the power needed to be. So that was a bit of back and forth. I had to meet with the power grid, with the utility several times, 3 or 4 times, because I was asking for yet another meter box on the same piece of property, which is specifically prohibited. But they went up the ladder, and by the time it reached the top guy at the utility company, he came out and was like, okay, no big deal. We're going to do that. So there was a bit of back and forth. But yeah, just basically hired a contractor, dug the ditches, put in the water, put in the power, brought in a new brought in a new meter. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And then your homes, I know we talked about this in a past conversation. The toilets are all compost toilets, right? So you
Yes.
didn't have
Uh-huh.
to deal with like setting up a septic for these houses.
Absolutely. Yes. And that, I mean, yeah, we've talked a lot about that. In fact, that's of course also a huge conversation in general, and any conversation about tiny homes. All of my tiny homes are currently have what's called a cedar loo toilet. So not a
Mhm.
true composting toilet. I used to use Nature's Head. I used to have Nature's Head
Yep.
toilets in the houses. The cleaners finally said no. So I
Okay.
have the additional challenge, not just of needing a waterless toilet scenario, but I have the additional challenge of having staff. I have staff that clean, and then I also have the
Right.
guest experience. So whatever toilet situation I came up with, it had to meet all of those requirements, right? The guest had to
Sure.
literally enjoy the experience. The cleaners had to sign off on, agree to, support the scenario. And then, of course, it had to
Hmm.
be, from my perspective, because I designed the homes, had to be a waterless solution, an odorless solution. And so I have kind of my own system that I created for that.
Very cool. Would you? Well, I mean, I'm just kind of. I want to go on this ride with you. So, can you describe the system?
Yeah. So, so we're all familiar with the bucket, basically, where you go to
Yeah,
the
the humidor
bathroom in the
toilet,
bucket, right? And then you have you have a handful of cedar chips or whatever that you toss on top of the
sawdust.
waste,
Sure.
and that kind of keeps
Yep.
the
Yep.
odor down. The challenge is, however, again, I have guests and I want them to literally
Mhm.
have a completely odorless and positive experience. So what I do is I start with the bucket, and then I take a
Yep.
9 millimeter bag specifically. It's got to be 9 millimeter.
Mhm.
Anything less, so I take a 9 millimeter garbage bag, basically, which is pretty common, but you have to be really specific.
Yep. That's
And
thick
then
though.
and then I toss in actual pellets. So the pellets I get from the feed store.
Yep.
Not These are not wood stove pellets, but they're kind of similar to that. So then you toss in the pellets.
Okay.
And then you take another bag and you toss in pellets, and then another bag and you toss in pellets, and another bag and toss in pellets. So every toilet is preset with 4 bags, and each bag, of course, has pellets at the bottom. So what happens is when the waste arrives, the pellets actually actively absorb and deodorize the liquid.
Yep.
And then off to the side of the toilet, there's a small container of aromatic cedar shavings. Then, when the guest
Mm.
takes, after the waste is done, then they take the cedar chips and toss it on top. That then deodorizes the solids. And then the third thing is,
Yep.
once per day during their stay, once per day, the guest actually pulls that bag and puts a knot on the top and puts it in the garbage can. So we have a garbage can with a big black garbage bag. So it's double bagged.
Yep.
They pull the bag out of the toilet, they put it in the garbage can, and the next bag is ready to go.
Nice. Clever.
Very rarely do I have guests that stay more than 3 or 4 days. So most of the time, they take care of it, they bag it, they dispose it, no problem. If I have guests that stay longer than 3 days, then I will deliver every 3 days another freshly preset bucket. So after they
Freshly
pull the
charged
last
bucket.
bag out of the last one, they drop the new bucket in. So very clean, completely odorless. And if you read my reviews, you'll see many, many, many people have commented positively about it being the best smelling system they've ever experienced.
Amazing. Well, that's I love the innovation there. I've the addition of the wood pellets is brilliant. I have used wood pellets as kitty litter, and it's true. They, as soon as any moisture touches them, they absorb it, they expand, they basically turn back into sawdust, but they do a
Mm-hmm.
really wonderful job.
Mm-hmm. And it's taken, I've experimented with different materials. I've experimented with different types of toilets,
Hmm.
different types of bags. I actually had a deodorizing salt that I actually added for a while, but that
Yep.
ended up being just, more than I really needed to do.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've experimented a lot over the years, and this was kind of the system that I finally resulted in. And And for those people that are not going to have a chance to ask the question that I know comes next, because when I talk to people in person, especially like at the bar, it's a great conversation.
It's a great conversation
with
starter.
strangers. Anyways, so the garbage company, the utilities, they're very familiar. They know exactly what's going on. From their perspective, this is no different from a disposal perspective. This is no different than a bag of diapers, right?
Sure.
So oftentimes that question will come up about disposal and is that even legal and all that fun stuff. So yes, of course I asked and that's the answer, right? We're double bagging it
Yeah.
and it's no different than a bag of diapers.
Yeah. Well, on that note, on a bag of diapers.
Maybe we found the title for the podcast.
Oh man. Yeah. Try that for the algorithm. It's no different than a bag of diapers with MJ Boyle.
Oh yeah, that's true. You do. Yeah, we have to take
Yeah.
the algorithm in consideration.
Yeah. Yeah. So you, at least in in previous interviews and just from what I've seen following you, you seem to find these, like, I hesitate to even call them tiny houses sometimes, like you just find these beat, like, houses, mobile structures on wheels. I think there was one that was like a chicken coop at one point, and then you turn them into these amazing rentals. We actually had a listener write in with a question about, how do you rehab a tiny house or renovate a tiny house? And I thought of you immediately because I'm like, oh my gosh, Michelle buys these tiny houses that in sometimes they like are not livable at all, and then she renovates them, she rehabs them and turns them into amazing tiny homes that happen to be rentals. But what I've seen you do, they all look like they would be totally comfortable to live in. I mean, if it's comfortable to rent for 5 days, why not 50 or 5 weeks? But can you talk about like what you look for when you're kind of looking at tiny structures, as and what makes something rehabable in the first place? What makes something worth buying and kind of fixing up?
That's an awesome question. Thank you for asking. So first of all, I have this knack, or my proclivity is probably a better word,
Mm-hmm.
for seeing things for not what they are, but for what they're going to be when I get done with them.
Mm-hmm.
And this has served me very well in this industry and in the building of my business. By the way, it does
Yeah.
not work very well with relationships, however.
Yeah, you can't be like, I'm gonna fix you and change you into the person that I want you to be.
Exactly. So it's taken me an entire lifetime to figure out that what I'm really, really, really good at is not great for relationships, but that's a different podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so I have the succinct answer to your question really has to do with the chassis, the wheels, the structure,
Okay.
the trailer. Like that's first and foremost. One of the things I cringe the most when I see tiny homes for sale online of any kind, the thing that I cringe the most, or the thing that I try to help people become aware of, is the
Mm-hmm.
health and the capacity of the chassis of the trailer itself.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't say that too many times in this conversation, because it's definitely felt like a mantra in many, many ways. So first and foremost is the health and the condition of the trailer. That's the deal breaker, right? That's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
first thing. That's the deal breaker. Beyond that, the next thing I have to consider in my business and in my plan is I say, what condition is it currently in? What time and money do I currently have? And can I take that current condition using my current pile of money and my current time constraint and accomplish the task? So I've done this 4 times, specifically 3 on wheels, one that wasn't on wheels that I put on wheels, totally different story. But for the purposes of this discussion, I've taken 3 in very, very, very different conditions, 3 existing structures on wheels in 3 entirely different stories, 3 entirely different conditions. And each one had that in common, right? Number 1, what's the chassis? Number 2, how much money and how much time? And can I take its current condition and accomplish what I need to do in the period of time that I've given myself? Again, as far as time goes, it's always my own self-imposed deadline, right? I don't have a boss. That's the glory.
Yeah.
Again, the best part of my business model. It's for me, with me, by me, about me. So I can change my mind at any time. But that's kind of where I start.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's a really great answer. So just to make sure that I'm getting it correctly, is first and foremost the chassis, the trailer. It's important that is in good condition because that's really almost impossible to change. And then it's just about time and budget based on what you see in the structure.
Yeah, but furthermore, not just about the condition. And this is the line in the sand that I try to draw again online when I see these conversations as much as possible. It also has to do with what the chassis is capable of carrying, right? So as a really, really simple example, your average RV, for instance, your average RV off the manufacturing floor, 18 to 20 foot long RV. It has a dual axle. Most of those can carry 7,000 pounds. That's it.
Yeah.
And that includes the weight of the trailer itself, which is about between 15 to 2,000 pounds, right? So trying to build a wood structure or a double story, a 2-story wood structure on an 18-foot long trailer that can only max out at 7,000 pounds, near to impossible, and not advisable. So when I see homes that need to be rehabbed or need to be sold or whatever, my first question is, what is the capacity of the trailer besides the condition, right? What can the trailer hold total? And when was the last time it was scaled? That's another thing. All of mine are scaled. I know exactly how much weight, that I'm starting with, how much weight I have to play with as I renovate it. And then so that's not just the basic condition, but also that's a big deal. I mean, a house that's overbuilt to the chassis, in my mind, is not worth the paper it's printed on.
Yeah. That's really important, and that's great advice. Okay, so we've got your kind of your criteria for the decision-making process of whether it's worth even buying or starting on. Is there anything, on the inside above that chassis that would scare you away and be
No.
like, yeah, no, this is a deal breaker. Can't
No,
deal.
actually, and that goes back to what you described as a chicken coop. It wasn't quite a chicken coop.
Yeah.
It was a pancake shack. But
okay.
And I, again, this is the part where my crazy really comes into play, because and where I describe myself as having the ability to see not what it is but what it will become, because everyone else. So the project I'm going to tell you just a brief story about was called My Tiny Wine Wagon.
Yeah.
And I found an ad on Craigslist, which, by the way, I can't allow myself to go on Craigslist. It's like saving puppies with me and tiny homes. So I found an ad on Craigslist for a 37-year-old. Well, actually, it was a 1954 single wide mobile home chassis, and on it they had built a pancake shack for a nonprofit community organization in Cottage Grove, Oregon. And this structure's sole job was, once a year, they would haul it to the top of a mountain. They would have what's called the miner's breakfast. And it had windows on the side, and this is the window where you place the order, and this is the window where you pick up the pancakes. And they had these metal ramps that would fold down so the people could walk up to the window level. And for 37 years, it was stored inside, and it had these huge fans. So it didn't really have a roof or a ceiling of any kind, because it was basically all fans.
Okay.
And people would drive up to the top of the mountain, pay $25 and get their pancake breakfast, and all the money would go to the local community. So this nonprofit was actually selling this pancake shack as a tiny home, but they did the wording wrong. And so it was listed under the wrong category, which is why I found it. Anyways, and so, but it was a dual axle trailer that could haul 20,000 pounds. And the reason why it was so much weight on the axles and on the trailer was because of the fact that the whole trailer on the inside was cast iron, right? You have these huge pancake like griddles, right? So you have tons and tons of propane tanks and pancake grills.
Wow.
And so the infrastructure on the inside was all of this weight, none of which, of course, I needed and ripped out immediately. So I bought that for $1,000.
Wow.
And then I decided, from a rehab perspective, obviously the roof had to go. There wasn't really any roof because it was all just, fans and so forth. So I had to create, of course, tore off the roof, and also had to create a slope and that kind of thing. But from a structural perspective, it stayed exactly the same. The windows didn't change. The doors didn't change. I did turn what was the back porch where they stored the propane tanks. That's now an outdoor shower, which is a fun feature.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was definitely a project where anyone else with any sanity at all would look at that project and say, oh, hell no, there's no way that's going to work out well. And I proved them all wrong.
The photos of that one in the before, like I look at it and I'm just like, I get a stomach ache.
I love those before after photos. They're so great.
Yeah, no, they're incredible.
So my tiny wine wagon is still in service.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I have someone that's staying there for 3 weeks.
Nice.
Continues to garner, rave reviews, lots of fans, 5 stars. I'm very, very, one thing about being a short-term rental hostess is setting the expectation, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows specifically before they come, this is your toilet situation. This is your shower situation. This is your ladder situation in some cases. So that's definitely one of the more extreme versions. The tiny home that I'm finishing right now was also a bit of a rehab, but not quite extreme. Not quite as extreme.
And what's this one going to be called? My Tiny
Bunkhouse.
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 All right.
Yeah. So this project that I'm just now finishing right now, again, going back to that whole scenario of what is the current condition, what's my monetary situation, what's my schedule, right? And so this one was actually purchased last fall, and architecturally, from the outside, it's the ugliest thing you've ever seen, because it's actually the construction trailers, those ugly, square, generic with one window and bars over the window scenario. Yeah, I bought one of those.
Yeah, they're just like the temporary office for a construction site.
Yeah.
They haul it out there. Yeah.
So
so you bought one of those and you're turning it in. Okay.
Yeah. So I bought one of those in all of its ugly glory. And the back, most notably, the short end in the back was a big, huge, ugly, rusted out roll-up garage door.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they roll up the garage door and then they drive in with the equipment and everything. Because of course you want everything expensive inside the work shack or whatever. And so, so that when I saw that particular door, the first thing that I did was, obviously that door went away, and now it's this beautiful full glass custom. Oh my God, I can't believe how much I paid for that door in the back. That just adds just a huge wow factor for the room.
Yeah.
I'm very excited actually though, about how it's going to turn out, because it's definitely going to have that juxtaposition of, doesn't look like much from the outside, but then you're going to walk inside and go, oh my God, this is amazing. Obviously added windows and the bathroom, and there's obviously, like any rehab project, I added a ton, but it actually, it's a 15K. And so lots and lots and lots of ability, to add. But on the other hand, I didn't have to add much, right? So the roof, the walls, the windows, the doors, like everything, the heavy stuff was pretty much remained the same. I did have to tear it down on the inside, almost to the studs, because of all the infrastructure that's required to add a bathroom and a kitchen.
Yeah.
So, tore out the stud all the way back to the studs to redo all the wiring. So in this particular one, however, the wiring was laughable because basically what they had done in many cases just stapled extension cords to the walls.
Uh-huh.
And then that was their electrical.
Oh,
so obviously
boy.
that wasn't going to work. So electrical and plumbing was the bulk, right, of the expense and the time for the bunkhouse project. And then of course you got to do the sheetrock and the paint and the texture and all that fun stuff. But yeah, that's a much less extreme but equally rewarding and project. Budget wise, boy, prices have increased so much in the past few years. It's crazy. So, but budget wise, I'll come out once it's complete. But another thing about my budgets versus your average tiny house budget is when I finish a project, that means the deck is done, the barbecue's on the back, all the patio furniture, the bedding, the plates, every single thing has to be 100% perfect for the first.
Fully set
and ready to go.
Yeah.
Which is an additional level of, again, a level of attention to detail and all. It's got to be just literally perfect when the first guest walks in. So this project, although it feels so expensive from a historical perspective on how many houses I've done now.
Yeah.
But this house, I'm super proud. By the time I'm done, total budget all in $25K. So not bad.
That's not bad at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty proud of that.
And also like whether you're looking at it as a short-term rental, which is an investment for you, or whether you were looking to live in it, 25K is at super low end for what a tiny house would cost. Certainly to buy a new one today. We're talking 100K and up now for a pre-made tiny house.
And this particular one it's because of the architecture, again, I didn't really reinvent too much. It's a main floor unit.
Yeah.
But it's long enough. It's 24 feet long. So I actually do have a lounge. I actually have a living room area, which is really rare in a tiny home. So I actually have a living room, a fully functional, 3-piece kitchen, bathroom, desk area, bedroom, queen size bed, and twin. So it sleeps 3 people. Really, really proud of this project. But also, as you can well imagine, by this point in time, I have experimented with enough projects and enough floor plans and enough materials that it's fun. In some instances, I'm executing against what I already know. In some instances, I'm starting over with a brand new product. So I get to learn something new. So that's another reason why I keep building, is because I love the creative process.
I have 2 questions from different angles. Like my first question is, like, talk about interior finishes to me when you're looking for like durability, cleanability, and then, minimizing the maintenance. My tiny house is now 12, 13 years old, and I'm starting, to have to repaint and restain and redo. And the choices I made 12 years ago, when I didn't really ever consider the fact that I might be renting this house out, the finishes that I chose weren't necessarily the most durable. They were maybe tended towards the low VOC or the environmentally friendly, but they have not always withstood the test of, Airbnb guests who are mostly very respectful, but just the house is getting used in a way that it never did when it was just, me and my partner. So what are some of the material choices that you make? Because I'm sure you come back to the same, products over and over again once you find ones that work well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, building a home for your own individual use versus building it for strangers who, may or may not have a full respect or understanding. Also, as you know too, tiny homes live hard, right? You're
Yeah.
spending, all that
Yeah.
time in that amount of square feet. So that yeah. So first and foremost, I will also say that another major consideration, two major considerations for me when I build, one of them is I allow pets in my short-term rentals. Less than
Wow.
25% of Airbnbs in this country, less than 25% of them allow pets at all. Number one.
Wow.
Number two, I also allow pets to stay for free. So less than 3% of total Airbnbs in the country not only allow pets, but allow pets to stay for free. I do charge a pet deposit, which means if you come and you follow the rules and clean up after yourself and then leave, everything's good, you get your deposit
Mhm.
back, you bring your pet for free. But that is a major, major consideration when it comes to flooring. Number one, flooring. So I only use luxury vinyl right now, LVP,
Yep.
a very, very, very high quality, scratch resistant, waterproof luxury vinyl in every single room, which is also something I learned versus my tiny house that I built in 2015. I did the tile in the bathroom and that kind of thing,
Yeah.
mainly because the product that I used for flooring in the main space wasn't adequate for a bathroom application that was going to get wet all the time. So now it's
Mm.
definitely something that I've learned. First and foremost is I use luxury vinyl in all of the tiny homes.
Yep.
Again, scratch resistant, water resistant. You can use, and it's also wall to wall. Shall we say? From a design perspective,
Yep.
that also makes the space feel a lot larger when the flooring, reaches all four corners of the house. So that's the first consideration,
Yeah.
material wise. I mean, I would never use anything else at this point. Absolutely. The second thing that
Floors. Okay.
I definitely take in
LVP.
consideration is, especially for my houses, which are going to get a lot of hard use. The second thing is tiny homes over time, the sexy, Instagrammable, folding stuff that we have created in order to live in our tiny spaces is super sexy,
Mhm.
tons and tons of views, completely 100% untenable, unusable, not happening in a rental.
Interesting.
So I mean, I understand that the ladder folds down or the bed rises to the ceiling. I mean, it's all really, really great conceptually, but when it comes to renters, no. So the other thing is I incorporate as many built-ins as possible. That bed is not moving, not going up, it's not going
Yeah.
down, it's not hitting against the wall. I don't use traditional furniture, even if it will fit. I'm not going to put in a couch, or I'm not going to put in, a regular bed frame with a fabric headboard or something fancy like that.
Right.
It's just not practical. And so that's another thing is I try to use as many built-ins as possible because you're creating stability, of course, in the furniture themselves. Again, the beds don't move; they're part of the literal building.
Yeah.
So that's two things off the top of my head. That's a big deal too.
Those are, I mean, I know you keep throwing out the disclaimers that like building for yourself is different than building for a rental, but I really think that having observed this movement and been a part of it for this long, I think almost everybody who builds a tiny house for themselves at some point, they decide that they either need more space, maybe they start a family, maybe something changes, and turning them into a rental is such a great and kind of obvious solution to that problem versus just selling them. And so I really think that anyone listening who is in the process of doing this, to think about this, think about the LVP instead of the hardwood floors if you can, and think about doing those built-ins for the same reasons that you might be renting this thing one day. And also it might just help cut down on the maintenance, you know, that you have to do down the
Oh,
road.
for sure. Can I just want to tell a real brief success story also in this line of questioning too.
No
Yeah.
stories. No, I'm kidding. Go for it.
Well, my stories tend to be long, so I'm going to try to make this one really short.
No, they're great. That's the whole point of you being here. Tell us
I
stories.
know, but I have so many of them.
Okay.
So I had another project real briefly, though, kind of along the same, conversation. I had another project called My Tiny Vagabond.
Okay.
And originally, I had bought it as a shell. I have never paid that much money for a shell in my life. I was feeling sorry for myself. And so I actually bought a shell that was almost completely done. Someone had already built the tiny home, and it was fairly lightweight. It was a dual axle. It was pretty lightweight. And at the time, in my mind, I had envisioned actually combining the teardrop concept of people take it with them when they go camping and the tiny house concept. So I'd originally bought it with the intention of renting it out for people to take it with them. I never executed on that. Long story, I won't go into it. So I decided to actually utilize it as a stay in place tiny home instead. So I bought the shell for $15,000, which again, I can't believe. And it wasn't really a shell, actually. It was pretty well finished out. But however, there was a lot that was wrong with it that I couldn't utilize for short-term rental. So I bought it for $15,000. I put $5,000 into it. So when I opened the doors as a rental, it was $20,000. I rented it out just general math. I rented it out for a year and a half. I made $25,000 over the course of that year and a half. So definitely, paid myself back for my original investment. And then because of all the shuffle that was going on in 2022, I couldn't utilize all the trailers that I had at my current location. So I actually ended up selling it for $35,000.
Nice.
So again, when you start with a lower budget, and when you think about the long term, the long term of it, it was relatively easy for me to sell it for $35,000 because it was now a proven rental. I could prove its income potential.
Yeah.
Plus, it had been redesigned in a way that was, again, super, super sturdy. And again, it was kind of this proven concept. So it ended up being a really, really great investment. I had to use that money, actually, that $35,000, I had to actually use that to pay for the move of the other tinies, right? So you have to tear down the decks. You have to call all the transporters, get of course, the RV park built at the new location. So that was another situation where I actually built a tiny house that was mostly done, but still had that idea of the long term and what I wanted to invest in it. And then it actually served a really great role even when I sold it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I want to ask, this is just totally selfishly because I do one Airbnb, I do my one tiny house, and I'm like, I know that the way that I'm doing it couldn't scale up to more. I could maybe do a second one the way that I'm doing it, but more than that, so my big pain point, I'm going to just say, is laundry, because, this house is about 20 minutes away from where I live. So my cleaners put the dirty laundry out in a bin once or twice a week. I'm driving down there. I'm picking up the laundry. I'm bringing it to my house. I'm doing the laundry. I'm bringing it back. Works great for one house or two.
And you've gotten really good at folding towels.
Yeah, I have I can air fold a towel. Like I don't even need a surface. I'm just like, just fold this towel up right against my body. But I mean, I looked into a laundry service, to get the laundry done by a laundry service. It's almost as expensive as buying a new set of sheets each time. It's so expensive. So I'm curious, you've got many, many tiny homes in different locations, it sounds like. And I'm guessing you didn't have to leave this interview to change the wash over. So I'm guessing you're not doing the laundry.
I'm not doing the laundry currently. Okay. First of all, I'm not doing, no, I mean, in this part of the season, shall we say. So one major disadvantage of this business model, especially at my new location, not as much at my Oregon location, but at my current rural Washington location is the seasonality. So with seasonality, of course, comes in reduced occupancy, right? So people staying less often. Also, you have a rate change. Obviously, you can't charge as much in the middle of December as you can for July 4th weekend, right? So we have a drop in occupancy, we have a drop in rates. But with that comes the fact that I've got a lot more time on my hands and a lot less money. So first and foremost, currently I'm ramping into what's called busy season for me, currently ramping into busy season. So I have more time than I have, or I have more money, than I have time. And so in this business, actually in life, I think, right, we're always making these decisions based on that. So the long story short is, yes, I have laundry service at both locations in Oregon and in Washington. I also have backup laundry service. So with anything, again, in life or in business, I always have a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, right? So it's entirely different depending on the season, what season I'm in, what's my profitability looking like currently. But yes, I do have this. I will tell you, however, again, cute little story. There's a laundry service here. My Washington location's in a small, kind of a smallish lumber town called Longview, Washington.
Yeah.
And there is a laundry service here, and they are the best. I just absolutely love these girls. And I drop it off, and the next day, talk about sheets. They come back looking better than when they were new. And they are folded just so tight and so pristine. Nice. And I was amazed at how well they fold the fitted sheets. And so I asked them, I'm like, seriously, what is your secret? Because when they're folded, I can't even tell the difference between the fitted ones and the folded ones. Because the fitted sheets are like folded so tightly, and they're like, we are never going to tell you our secret for how well we fold the fitted sheets, because then you're just going to do it yourself. And I'm like, that will never happen.
No. That will never happen.
But yes, I pay $2 per pound dry weight.
Yeah.
Which again is quite a bit. That basically amounts to about between $8 to $10 per house per turn.
Yeah.
So slow season, I do not have the margin. Yeah. I'm doing laundry because I don't have the profit margins to be able to sub that out. Busy season, oh hell no. Like I barely have time to breathe. So
yeah. Interesting. All right. I'm taking notes.
Well, that actually, again, what makes the difference between my ability, because I have businesses in Oregon and businesses in Washington, they're 85 miles apart. I commute back and forth about 3 to 4 times per week. I also have a full-time 40-hour-a-week job. And so the only way that I'm able to pull that off, not just the laundry part of it, but the whole operation, is by having staff in place at both locations. So we have we'll call it first round draft pick, second round. We've always got a plan A, a plan B, a plan C for every single reservation and for everything that needs to be done. So in addition to the regular stuff, like your cleaning and laundry, those are kind of obvious, but we've also got, as you can imagine, my maintenance to-do list on a 3-acre waterfront property that sleeps 20 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to shout out to my team. I have an amazing, super supportive, very flexible, enthusiastic team. And that is really the I guess the secret sauce for my business currently is my amazing team that knows exactly what to do, that I don't have to micromanage them. We've also got, the other thing is the inventory too. When you start to scale, you have to think about inventory, right? I have six sets of sheets for each individual house.
Yep.
So that's a lot of
sheets.
So you have to have a room. I have a linen room. I have an entire room that is just devoted to storing the dirty laundry going out, the clean laundry coming in, the storage of the raw inventory that's waiting.
Yep.
So that you become this inventory manager. Plus, you have all the supplies as well from a. So scaling is definitely a challenge, but the team, the supply process that I have in place, the inventory arrangement, and all my labels. I actually love the business part of the business as well.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to love it because it's a
Yes.
lot of that. It probably is more that than getting to design and build
Yes,
tiny houses.
absolutely. As a matter of fact, the reason why I continue to build and design tiny homes, because that's the fun part. That's the creative
right
part. That's the part that lights my brain on fire. That's the rewarding part of the project as well, right? When people show up and they look at this ugly thing that used to be a work shack and they walk in for that first time and I get that first 5-star review and they're like, this was amazing. We love the bunnies. We love the river. We love Michelle was so attentive. That's the really rewarding part. Who's doing the laundry? No one cares. No one cares.
Right. Nobody cares about that. They just care that the sheets are clean and
exactly,
that it's done.
Nice.
Nice. Oh my gosh, this has been so fun talking with you. I feel like we could just keep going and going. I was curious, is there anything that I didn't ask you that, this conversation has sparked that you just want to put out there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, what came to my mind the minute you asked that question, which I realized was I think I'm done. So, for the people in my life that every time I say that, nope, this is it, they're the last one. The people in my life always laugh when I say that, but I think I'm there. I think I'm almost there. And so maybe our next podcast interview in a year or two, right? You can say, hey, did you ever end up living up to your own promise for yourself? Are you done? I think I'm done. Number one, I'm out of space at the current property. So there's that. I'd have to invest in new property. And number two, my current property, I have yet to really execute the event venue part of this property. So this property is also a wedding venue for corporate retreats, family retreats, wedding venue kind of scenario. I have had, some weddings here, but I haven't really started engaging in that industry. That's an entirely different, right? An entirely different spin on my business model. So I think I'm done, and it's been a wild, fun ride. And now I think I might be kind of pivoting a little bit, maybe doing some more events, and only time will tell whether or not my energy holds out that well.
Nice. Well, I look forward to having you back. We didn't even touch Oregon teardrop rentals, which I'm super curious about, but that's going to have to be another.
Yeah, no,
interview.
I appreciate that opportunity. It's again, it's very, very, very similar to the short-term rentals, right? To the Airbnbs and VRBO rentals. But the part that I enjoy the most about that business model, which I don't get with my short-term rental tiny homes, is Oregon Teardrop Rentals is a 100% concierge-based business. I meet in person every single guest. I shake their hand. We have a whole hour-long orientation before they leave. So I know about them and their family and where they're headed and their fun stories of their vacations. And so that's a really a similar business model, but kind of feeds my soul from a social perspective. So yes, I'd love to talk about that anytime. So hit me up and we can talk about a lot of similarities between that business model and the tiny homes. However, across the board, I also want to say that one of the best parts of my life, my business model, my decisions is I get to share my values with my guests. My values of you can travel with a teardrop and you can sleep comfortably and dry and quiet and secure, but you're not in an RV park, cooking in your kitchen in your 40-foot long RV. You still get to be comfortable, but there's this simplicity and you can still have that comfort and that simplicity. And so I love that I get to introduce tiny, simple, quiet, disconnected lifestyle with all of my guests, whether you're staying in a tiny home or you're staying in a teardrop trailer or my A-frame out by the creek or my quote unquote luxurious cottage. It all kind of carries forward with that simple, disconnected, authentic, kind of quiet lifestyle. And I love that I get to share those values with my customers.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. MJ Boyle, thanks for being a guest.
Thank you. It was really, really great to catch up with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to MJ Boyle for being a guest on the show today. You can find the show notes, including a complete transcript, photos of some of MJ's beautiful tiny homes, and of course, links to all of these businesses so that you can stay in them. I hope you do go and stay in them because MJ is awesome, and I know that her tiny homes are awesome too. That is all at thetinyhouse.net/298. Again, that's thetinyhouse.net/298. That is all for this week. I am your host, Ethan Waldman, and I'll be back next week with another episode of the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast.